Greetings travelers, and welcome to another Last Epoch build video. This is my first build diary, and I'm dubbing this build the Explosive Flask Marksman, and you'll see why. So basically, we're using both detonating arrow and acid flask, and we're stacking as much poison as we can. And to do that, we're basically triggering both of those with explosive trap here. So this build has been extremely fun. The clear is extremely fast. You'll see when we do an echo here towards the end of the video that the clear speed is absolutely amazing. It's the fastest I've felt in the game yet, and I hope that you all like it. So let's get into kind of what the build does. As I was saying, we do trigger acid flask and detonating arrow both with the explosive trap here. And in the tree here, we're just getting the trap sprinkler node. And what that does is basically, as the explosive traps detonate, it has a chance to drop additional traps and throw them at enemies. So the traps are thrown themselves, everything's kind of automated. And this node here makes sure that basically every time that a trap explodes, it's dropping a new one. So this is pretty mana friendly. Well, mana unfriendly, I would say initially, but as they start to proc and trigger, you're gaining all of this mana cost that you would have been spending to throw more traps. And again, it also kind of automates everything. My flasks are automatically thrown towards enemies. My detonating arrows are homing, so they seek out enemies and explode. And then all I have to do is right-click underneath of them to get these traps at or near them. And it kind of takes care of the rest. So the shurikens are for mana regeneration. So as you'll see, the mana cost for all of this to trigger and for all of these shenanigans to happen is quite high. And that's where shurikens comes in as a blade shield. It's giving us a ton of additional armor per shuriken. We're getting poison chance as well for shurikens, as well as a bunch of other applications of thrown poison chance and things like that, which I'll show you. So shurikens alone are stacking a ton of poison, and you do need this pierce chance, I found out, with blade shield. Yeah, blade shield. You do need the pierce chance. Otherwise, you're going to be consuming the shurikens that are revolving around you, which I found out the hard way, that the shurikens just disappear. And I was like, what is the point of this node? So you need 100% pierce chance. Otherwise, again, like I said, those shurikens are just being consumed by the enemies that you run through or pass through, and then you just have to cast it again. So I thought originally that shurikens was just a terrible node. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. Shurikens is amazing. You just need to understand the game. So yeah, get the pierce chance if you're going to be using blade shield so that they continue to revolve around you for the entire duration and that you continue to gain the benefit of them. So that's awesome. That made shurikens almost an immediate slot in most all of my marksman build iterations, just because of the amount of armor that you can get. Like right now, I have 21% armor just chilling here. When I cast shurikens, I get all the way up to 53% armor just from shurikens. Like, I'm not doing anything else. Nothing else is happening there. That's just shurikens and the amount that I'm able to get through both this node, and Lyraka's Claws, which gives me an additional +2. And also that poison on throwing hit is awesome. That's applying to explosive trap and acid flask as well. So in acid flask, we've got these are being thrown for us. We don't have to ever click or touch acid flask. The global poison chance in the pools here that are being applied as the acid flasks land. So the poison pools are poisoning the enemy as well as they run through them. It's applying efficacious toxin, which is just more dot damage. And then it's also, when we're standing in it, giving us global poison chance. So that applies to our shurikens, that applies to detonating arrow, and also explosive traps. All of that is getting a benefit from just standing in our poison pools, which is amazing. And then down here in the far bottom portion of acid flask is how we're going to be scaling our damage. So if you read it here, for every 5% uncapped poison, which is basically everything over 75% is considered uncapped, we're getting 3% penetration with poison, which is more, it's a more damage multiplier. So every time that we're getting any kind of poison resistance over the cap, you divide that by 5 and multiply that by 3, and that is your penetration. That is huge. If you get, say, 350 to 400% penetration, we're talking like 150 to 200%. Sorry, if you get 350 to 400% poison resistance, we're talking about 150 to 200% penetration of poison, which is huge, absolutely huge. So Acid Flask is our heavy hitter, and it'll continue to scale as we get better gear and more opportunities for just more poison resist. That's how we're scaling our damage, funnily enough, is just stacking vitality and poison resist. Vitality being health, necrotic, and poison resist. So super cool interaction there. I love Acid Flask for that. I didn't want to be throwing it though, so when I saw that you could have it thrown for you, I was all over it. So to actually be considered a marksman build, I wanted to have a bow ability because I am using a bow. This is actually a marksman bow build. Every other marksman is currently using gel cores that I know of, so I found this quite cool. And in detonating arrow here, we're getting more damage over time for all of the dots that are applied with detonating arrow. We're getting this node here, which is just more area. That's huge. We don't incur the cooldown because it's being triggered by explosive trap here. So we can just fully benefit from this node with no downside due to it being triggered. This node here, and again, I'm not too keen on all of the interactions here. I'm still kind of learning the game and the mechanics, but the way that I read this was that if the enemy has an explosive, or a detonating arrow stuck in them already, that it'll just explode that one immediately. Yeah, it explodes the first arrow immediately. So then that kind of goes in tandem with this one here. It doesn't attach an additional arrow with Sucker Punch here, but it does give you additional area if you hit an enemy that already has an arrow attached, and will almost always have an arrow attached because they almost never explode. So by taking this node here and reducing our mana cost to 0, which is huge, because as you'll see, maintaining both explosive traps and acid flasks is a lot of mana. So getting the detonating arrow that's also triggering to 0 was big, and we don't benefit from that mana gained on hit that I've noticed, because we're triggering it. We're not actually casting detonating arrow, so that's kind of nullified, which sucks, but we are getting the no mana cost benefit, and then the third line there, which is the reduced explosion chance. So what that means is basically, as these detonating arrows are hitting enemies, they only have a 15% chance to explode. So more often than not, the enemies are just going to be sitting there with an arrow sticking in them, and then a second detonating arrow is going to be coming their way and sucker punching them in the face with a huge thundersteel explosion as well. So as you'll see, the explosions on detonating arrows are massive, absolutely massive. So that's amazing. So all of this is just more poison, just more damage, and really, really cool, and no mana cost to us. So to have that being triggered for 1 point over here on explosive trap was kind of a no-brainer for me. And that thoroughly makes this, in my eyes, a marksman build. So we're an explosive flask marksman. And explosive trap and flask, I'm just kind of combining there. I don't know. We're still thinking on the names. This is a build diary. This is a build diary, okay? We're not coming up with the name just yet. That's not finalized. But anyway, another cool thing, sorry, before we get started on the Echo, is that all of this could kind of work for Ignite, or cold, or like flat hit lightning, maybe even crit. There's a lot of different ways, I feel, as long as it works with Acid Flask, that you could build it. I really like the Ignite potential for Acid Flask and Explosive Trap. You get the Fire Res Shred from that. Detonating Arrow can be fire as well, and all of this would ignite. I don't know what you could do for shurikens. I think that there's gloves that converts bleed chance over to ignite chance. That might be cool. But anyway, there's opportunity there to not be poison for this build. So I'm inevitably going to try and get gear for that as well, and just try and shift that over, because Ignite has the benefit of LE damage over time, which is nearly double the threshold that you can get on the just regular damage over time affix. So you can really scale Ignite to the moon. And there's just a ton more interactions with Ignite than there is with Poison that I feel, or at least that I've seen. So yeah, let's go ahead and do an echo and just show you all how it runs before we wrap the video up here. So basically all we're doing is maintaining our shurikens. That's our armor, that's our survivability, and that's also our mana. I forgot to go over the mana part. So this build costs a ton of mana. How we get that back is this node here. And this is Marksman exclusive, and why I think that this build works. And nobody has really thought about it yet. So Mana Warp. Basically every time we use a 0-cost skill and hit an enemy, we get 15 mana back. And the bow attack mana cost doesn't really apply to us. We don't care about that because detonating arrow, as you saw, was free. And that's the only bow attack that we're using. So the shurikens are amazing. That's our survivability through armor and also our mana gain back because they're 0 cost. So right click, cast shurikens on the enemy. Right click, cast shurikens on the enemy. And that's getting your mana back, and then the explosive traps are literally doing everything else. They're throwing additional explosive traps for you, they're throwing acid flasks at the enemies, they're shooting detonating arrows at the enemies for you, and exploding those once Sucker Punch kicks in. My god, this build is beautiful. It's very fast thanks to these boots and other things. Kind of ignore the gear for now. The uniques aren't mandatory. We'll go over that in another video. This was just kind of a build diary, build diary number 1 on how the build feels and plays and is. So let's take a look. And this is an arena, but oh well, we'll make it work. Less so an echo run and more an arena run, but you get the gist. And I don't know if this is valid or correct, but what I like to do is make sure I've got all of these shrine buffs first that the arena has to offer. And then I usually pick a corner and just let them come to me. But as you can see, the clear is phenomenal. Single target is really, really good as well, because a lot of this shotguns, I feel like, on big boss models. So you're stacking up 500 to 600 poisons on a boss, if not more. And again, scaling damage is as simple as getting poison resist to scale my poison penetration for acid flask, because that is my heavy hitter. And then just damage over time, and as oh, there's an experience shrine I didn't get. That's bad. Damage over time, chance to poison, and things like that. I've got some throw speed. I've got throw mana cost reduction. That's how I'm getting shurikens to 0 and how I'm reducing the explosive trap cost a little bit. But yeah, like, look at this, guys. Look at this. Feels so good. This is around 175 corruption, so I'm just going to continue to push that up to 300 plus, see how far we can go, and really just continue to scale the build, get better slams, get better gear. And it's just a blast. I'm just right-clicking and shuriken. This is like the most chill build that I've played yet, and it seems pretty fast comparatively to others. Like, the damage is good. Obviously, we've got a ton of move speed inherently just from marksman and rogue things. Nearly 100% haste through other methods. But yeah, really liking the build, guys. I hope you do too. If you do, please leave a like on the video. And I will see you all in build diary number 2 for the Plague Doctor Marksman, the Explosive Flask Marksman. Thank you so much if you stayed this long into the video. This is my first build diary, soon to be first of many, I hope. I'll see you all in the next one, travelers. Farewell.